So Benoy K. Behl is a filmmaker, art historian, and photographer who is known for his tireless and prolific output of work over the past 40 years. He has taken over 50,000 photographs of Asian monuments and art heritage, made 138 documentaries, which are regularly screened at major cultural institutions worldwide. His photographic exhibitions have been warmly received in 54 countries around the world. These have been inaugurated by ministers of the governments of various countries, ambassadors, archbishops, and other dignitaries. He holds the Lanka book record for being the most traveled photographer. His films, including 26 documentaries on the paintings of India, 26 documentaries on the sculpture of India, and 26 documentaries on spectacular India, have been nationally telecast on primetime in India. In January 2008, the National Geographic magazine carried an 18-page story about ancient Indian art that was revealed through his photography. He is also the first Indian about whose work National Geographic magazine has carried an extensive story. BBC World News has also carried 3 major stories about his pioneering work in India and Vietnam. His photography of ancient murals in remote places has clearly established the continuous tradition of painting in India from ancient times through the medieval period. This is significant as earlier the Indian tradition of painting was believed to begin in medieval times. His recent work on yoga has made a notable contribution to the knowledge of the subject. On International Yoga Day 2015 and 16, his exhibitions on the subject were held in 20 countries, and his films on yoga were shown in Indian embassies and high commissions in 50 countries. He has been invited to lecture at many important universities and museums around the world, including our museum here. I believe he told me his first time lecturing at the museum was in 2002, so we're really happy that he's come back here to join us for this exhibition. He has many, many more accomplishments, but I will stop here and welcome Benoy Behl to introduce the film. Please join me in warmly welcoming him.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A great pleasure to be here again. My thanks to the Consul General of India for joining us. My thanks to the Director of the Asian Art Museum. And my thanks to the Asian Art Museum for supporting for the start of this project of making a film on the Ramayana. It was here that a start was made, and then the Ministry of External Affairs of the Government of India also asked me to make this longer version of the film, which you are now going to see. In fact, there is yet another even longer version, a 1-hour version of the film, which is also under production, and you would all appreciate that a subject like this would deserve at least a 1-hour film should be made. A great miracle in the story of man is the spread of ideas. Ideas do not seem to recognize boundaries of nations or mountains or oceans. And the widespread of these ideas, the warm acceptance of the ideas of life by people in vastly different and faraway places, surely underlines the sameness of the human condition everywhere. And perhaps one of the greatest examples of this spread of ideas is the Ramayana. It's incredible to see how through millennia, billions of people have immensely enjoyed the story of the Ramayana, who have taken it to heart, who have lived the values and thoughts contained in the story, how this has been a cornerstone, a foundation of culture. for such a vast number of people. And most importantly, I think we are reminded of the fact that I think this is important in today's world where so much of life has become based so much upon material values and our material desires, that there should be something else which is more important. That beyond all our daily material concerns, there should be something which we hold more dear, which we are more passionate about, which absorbs our minds more completely. And indeed, the Ramayana is one such epic which brings together so much that is important to us and puts it all in this very entertaining story format. So let me not hold you back any further from the film, and Forrest and I would be so happy to join you after the film to discuss it with you. And I'll just say that it's been a great pleasure to work with Forrest, to work with Lorraine, to work with Deborah, to work with the museum on this film. Thank you very much.
I'd like to introduce our curator of the Rama Epic exhibition, Forrest McGill, to join Director Behl on stage for a Q&A.
Tell us about your process of making the film. How many countries did you go to, and how did you make arrangements to find the right performances and the right people to interview?
I think it is 9 countries that we shot in, and we were in touch mainly through the embassies of India, and in a few cases more directly to find out the best of performances that we could locate. So that's how the process went.
Was there a time when you were in some part of India or some part of Southeast Asia where you said to yourself, where did that come from? That's an aspect or an interpretation of the Rama stories that I'm not familiar with. Did you have a surprise?
I'm not so sure about the surprise part of it, but I would say that the gentleness and the meditative quality of the performances in particularly in Cambodia really touched our hearts. Even more than the others, the Cambodian performance was, as they said, it was more of a dedication. In fact, it's important to realize that these, in fact, all the classic dances emanating from India too, are not at all supposed to be performances. They are, they're supposed to be dedication, they're supposed to be offerings to the deities, they're supposed to be part of the philosophic search, they're supposed to be a journey within to find those qualities inside yourself. So it is only today that we tend to find them on a stage and being shown as performances for people, which does in fact change them completely. So it was Cambodia, perhaps Laos, some other places where we saw some of that original quality. Yes, about surprise, the Bhutanese performance.
That surprised me too. I wasn't familiar with it. Please say something more about it.
A very natural and a very joyous performance, and it seems to suit so well when you're talking about the happiness of Ram Rajya and the very natural way in which they are still trying to live life in that country seems to come through. The other performance which was remarkable was the performance in Bali, the Kechak dance, which is such a marvelous integration of cultures. I mean, the story, the philosophy coming from the Indian subcontinent, but the performance so completely out of the heart of the culture of Bali. So that was quite wonderful. In fact, really that's what seems to have happened in different ways all across South and Southeast Asia, where it is an amalgam of cultures, a way of thinking and a way of being fused into one.
Benoy, picking up on that idea, here's an interesting question from the audience about the great range of kinds of performance traditions, even within India. Someone is noticing that in your film, the Ram Leela performances with, everybody's microphone is visible, and just outside is the Ferris wheel, and so on, in a festival context versus the Kudiyatam that you showed. So we're asked, could you say a little more about the variety of performing traditions, even within India?
Yes. The Ramayana is a part of life, and therefore all the different performing traditions which you have would bring the Ramayana to you. So the festive atmosphere of the people would bring you Ram Leela in a particular way. At the same time, the different dance traditions, classic and semi-classic dance traditions would also bring you Ramayana the way that you see in the Odissi here in this film. And of course, the classic Sanskrit tradition would also bring you the Ramayana. So yes, I mean and these are just a few, but every single kind of tradition of art, music, singing, dance, everything would carry the story, would carry the meaning.
One of the things that you will have noticed in our exhibition downstairs, and I hope you've had a chance to look, picking up on what Benoy is saying, and I'd like you to say more about this too. One of the things that we noticed in putting together the exhibition is the stories are, both in Southeast Asia and in South Asia, are familiar to people in remote villages, people who are farming and doing day labor, all the way up to the classical versions in university, or in the old days, the royal versions. So from the village up to the royal court, people know the stories and are thinking about them, performing them in different ways, of course. But in the exhibition, we see popular prints that were on calendars. We see shadow puppets of various kinds, and shadow puppet theater is an adult theater in Southeast Asia. We see paintings from courtly contexts and from village contexts. So would you say more about the pervasiveness of the story through different strata of society?
You see, the various arts have been used in the Asian context to help us on the path of self-realization. So, so it is all kinds of people. It is the most common people, if you would like to use that term, or the most sophisticated or the most educated people, everybody, every form of art. It is all involved in helping us while we live in the world as we live in it, while we live in the material world, while we have to eat, clothe ourselves and do all that in the world, to remind us of that which is within us, that which is more important. So it is all used towards that. And while I talk about education or lack of it, or common people or elite people, I would like to mention something which you would be so conscious of in curating the art and knowing the history of that part of the world, which is that in ancient times there was a very pervasive education. As a matter of fact, until very recently, so-called not very educated people, the so-called commonest of people in a country like India, could discuss with you in great nuance and detail very sophisticated thoughts about the illusory nature of the material world around us. I mean, which in today's context, it needs a very highly educated professor probably to be able to talk about. But gardeners, maids working in the house, the so-called commonest of people, could discuss all this in very great and highly nuanced detail. That is the kind of democratization of philosophy, which is, after all, true education, a science of life, which they used to be. And I think all of us all this reminds us of the fact that that this true education is in fact being forgotten today. We are becoming more and more technically oriented, educated. We are becoming more educated in terms of how to make a little money. But this, the science of life, this, the Ramayana, teaching us the science of life, is something which is getting forgotten.
Benoy, that brings up another question from the audience. In your own life, in your own upbringing, when did you first encounter the Ramayana, and how did it come to mean something in your own life, your own personal experience?
I don't know when exactly. I'm reminded of the gentleman from Nepal who also says that he doesn't really remember when he first came across these characters. But I do remember that as a small child, I was scribbling a few lines somewhere about his farewell took from his father. Ram, bids goodbye, etc. So these are things which have just been a part of the life of children, and obviously it seems that it is very much a part of my life too. In fact,
You grew up where? You grew up where?
I grew up mainly in Delhi, in New Delhi.
Benoy, another question from the audience. The Sita insisting on a trial by fire to prove her fidelity. This is a puzzling and uncomfortable episode for a lot of people these days, and I think in fact has been for centuries. What in making this film, what did you find that the performers and the scholars and the people represented in the film have episodes that are particularly puzzling or troubling to them, and how did they work through them, and how did they think about them and interpret them for themselves so that they could make sense in terms of our life in 2016?
Well, I think the best way and the most graceful way in which the dancers of Cambodia tackled the question about how Sita is treated or what happens to her. Yes, the most graceful way was the dancers of Cambodia, who just performed that entire episode so very gracefully. They infuse it with so much beauty and grace. And now, this is something that needs to be looked at. You know, society at any given point in time has different things that make us feel uncomfortable. I believe it was till not so recently that women may not have had the right to cast votes, for instance, in the USA. Now, when you're talking about a story which is set, you know, something in the order of 2,500 years ago, and you're looking at that context, even though that society seems to be very, very emancipated, there would be some things about it which we would not be very comfortable about today. So I think the way that people have tackled it, and I would suggest that perhaps the way we should also understand and tackle it, would be to take the best that we can out of what comes to us, and not to lose ourselves in combating something which is not the very best out of what that story has to offer. Because the moment we start doing that, we get ourselves trapped in you know, as if that were the whole story, which it is not. So then we lose the better part of what we can gain from the story. And if you see it from that point of view, you will be able to find that there are many positive aspects to the way that Sita is seen and treated in the story. So that is what I think some of the performers have done, and what I suggest that we could also do in our looking at it.
Continuing with this one a little bit, a young woman growing up today, if she's told to look to Sita as a role model, and if what that means is be obedient to your father and then be obedient to your husband, obedience is the primary duty of a young woman, how do we think about this in the light of present day life and the need and the wish of young women to have their own lives?
Much of what comes to us today about ancient times, particularly in India, after the colonial experience of India, much of what comes to us is highly colored by the colonial experience, and an attitude of mind which has been created to have a negative attitude towards anything which is part of an early culture there, without the improving influences of the colonial rule. So therefore, this obedience bit, I think, is a very typical phrase of post-colonial India in talking about this, because I don't really see women having to be so obedient in early India. Historically, what one sees is that that women have an independent and economically independent and powerful role to play. I mean, you and I know that the ancient monuments of India and the ancient art of India was really an art of the people. And we find hundreds and hundreds of inscriptions at the ancient Buddhist sites, for instance, which show that it is the common people who have, in fact, sponsored the making. I mean, as an instance, let's take the Sanchi monument, where 631 inscriptions still survive. And one inscription says that this pillar is a sponsorship of a housewife. Another inscription says this architrave has been sponsored by a fisherman, etc. And we do notice in ancient India that more than half the inscriptions are those of women. And mind you, these financial contributions from women, quite often it is stated that the man is worshipping Vishnu and his wife is worshipping the Buddha, and she's making a financial contribution to a Buddhist monument or a Jain monument. So the women obviously have independent control of their finance, etc. So you do really have a society where women are seen time and again and again and again to have I would say a much more independent and active role to play than in most other parts of the world. So this question of being obedient, I think, is really a post-colonial response. And I would respond to the person asking the question to say that you do not have to be, in Indian or Indic terms, you do not have to be obedient. You have to be good. You have to be kind, you have to be thoughtful. And most importantly, you have to be self-searching. You have to look within. You have to emancipate yourself. You have to look for the beautiful qualities within you and rise. And please do not be obedient. Because if you are obedient, how can you rise? How can you be yourself?
Two last questions, Benoy. One is, in your observation, how are the Ramayana, Rama epic stories being passed on today in India primarily? Amarachitra comics are still there, TV episodes are still there, movies are still there, video games are there nowadays. What else? What are the main means today where a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old is, by which a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old is learning the stories?
These that you mentioned are in fact the main ways today, and really that is a pity, because it is not only a story, but the way that it is told and the manner in which it's told, which is very important. Therefore, if it is a grandparent who is telling the story, then it has its own meaning. If it comes to you on television with a a sponsor's message selling a bad for the health soft drink before this program, and after that selling something equally awful, and then punctuating it in the middle with something maybe more awful. You know, and then the whole program is also tailored in order to get something which I think it's called TRP.
What is that? What is
I
TRP?
think the number of views that programs get on television or something like that. Now, when the whole thing is tailored for that, then the manner of telling the story changes. And when the manner of telling it changes, the story changes. So it's rather a pity, but actually this is a science of life which should be either passed on through the community, through the family, through the schools, and even in the schools, through the guru, through the teacher in whose heart it is to teach, through the love of a teacher who is teaching for the sake of teaching life to the students, where physics or chemistry or mathematics is only one of the things which is being taught, but it is life itself which is being shared. Now that is how it should be. And then you have the Ramayana.
I have to say you're functioning as that guru for many of us in various ways. Last question, and then then we can talk informally. One audience member mentions that the exhibition downstairs is just in order to concentrate and help the general public, is focusing on four main characters: Rama, Sita, Hanuman, and Ravana. And one of our audience members asks, is there one of those four characters that you feel particularly close to yourself, and why?
I would just like to say that each one of those four characters is a personification of some things which are inside you. In fact, all the Indic deities that you come across or will ever come across are personifications of the qualities within you. All the sculptures that you will see of the Indic deities in this museum, please see them as mirrors. In all their grace and beauty and other qualities, they are supposed to show you something from within yourself. I would like to mention that the most popular deity today out of these four, and not only today but perhaps even in the past, has been Hanuman. You know, whereas it is the major deities, the Ram, or in the sister tradition of Buddhism, the great Bodhisattvas, these are the main deities. But those figures that are made who are devoted to these major deities give an easier path of access to us. We are able to see ourselves in them. We are able to see all the simplicity of ourselves, the lack of knowledge of ourselves, the devotion which we can find or can hope to find within ourselves in these characters who are devoted to the main deities. And here, if I may share, I would, that my own experience at Ajanta, which, as you know, has been very important in my life. This is Ajanta, the 5th century Buddhist paintings of Ajanta. When I came away from there with being completely carried away by these figures on the side who look with feelings of adoration towards the main deity, just as Hanuman does towards Ram. So it is that being able to lose oneself in adoration of another, which is the easiest path.
Benoy, thank you very much for your wise words and your wonderful film that has enriched us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.